I'm Steph Weber, and you're listening to Sweet Success.
You've just checked in to Sweet Success. Join me, Katie Klein, for exclusive conversations with hotel executives, hospitality leaders, and industry innovators. Together, we'll uncover the strategies and techniques these masters of hospitality relentlessly refine. Whether you're already in the industry or just starting out, tune in every week to unlock the secret to your sweet success. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sweet Success. I'm your host, Katie Klein, and today I'm thrilled to welcome Steph Weber to the show. Steph is the founder and CEO of The Weber Co., a branding and marketing agency for hospitality operators. Her work spans micro resorts, boutique hotels, cabin communities, and high-performing short-term rentals, all focused on helping her clients build brands that stand out and scale. She's also the owner of Cabins on the Cumberland, a 12-cabin micro resort and event venue with private river access in Kentucky. Steph, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Katie. I'm honored to be here.
It's so great to get to spend some time together. I want to first really dive into the beginning with you. And how did you first get started in hospitality?
Yeah, well, I have to take you back to where I started in the fashion industry because that's what led me to hospitality. So when I was 17, my parents were like, listen, we're going to get you a car, but you've got to figure out gas and you've got to figure out insurance. You're going to have to figure this out on your own. So I got a job at a local boutique, and little did I know that boutique would turn into a full-time career for me for the next 7 years. It was crazy. Wow. But in that, I was their brand manager. I was their general manager. I wore a lot of different hats because it was a small local business. We actually opened a second location, and in 2016, we started working with influencers. And I was like, hang on a minute. We are sending clothes to people, so they're getting free clothes, and we're paying them to talk about what they're wearing from our boutique. This feels like something I can do. So I created my own brand called Trendy and Indie, and I was a fashion, beauty, and travel influencer. And I had a lot of really cool collaborations in the hotel space, 25 Hours hotels over in Europe, the Andaz in Napa Valley and on Wall Street, Lark Hotels. So a lot of really awesome collaborations, BottleWorks here in Indy. And in all of that, Katie, I was sitting at New York Fashion Week in 2018, which was like so many influencers' dream. And I had lived in New York City. I was an intern there. It was a whole thing. So I was like, here I am, living a dream, and this is really cool. Maybe I don't appreciate it enough, but I'm meant to do something different. I'm not meant to just be an influencer for the rest of my life. This is not what I want to do. So I realized in the work that I had done, my secret sauce was really in being able to help these businesses understand branding at a much deeper level beyond their logo. And so I created and pivoted to the Weber Co. And we did that in 2019 after I hosted an in-person women's conference for 150 women who filled a room in Indianapolis and knew me as an influencer. And I was like, this is it. This is the moment that I pivot and take everything I've been doing and turn it into coaching and consulting, and then eventually launching the Weber Co., our agency. So I supported hundreds of different entrepreneurs in a variety of different industries across the board. You name an industry, I probably had my hands on it in some capacity. And that was through coaching programs, through launching our agency, etc. Then in 2023, I decided I was 8 months pregnant with our second baby. So we had a toddler at home as well. And I was like, now is the perfect time to get into the world of short-term rentals. We should definitely buy our first property. And so I remember literally waddling around looking at houses here in Indianapolis. So we did purchase our first property. I was literally in the delivery room. My husband is on the phone with our inspector. Our real estate agent is connecting me to who would become our first client for our co-hosting business. So it was in the spring of 2023, we decided to buy a second property, to start a new business. And then when I got into this, Katie, I was like, hang on a second. I can take everything I've done for the Weber Co. and niche into this space. Everything that I've done completely and totally supports this space. And every mentor was like, Steph, you're going to have to pick a niche. And I was so resistant to that because the natural niche for me would have been the fashion industry. I spent 10 years in that industry. And I was like, man, I don't want to do that. So I don't know what niche I want to pick. And then I'm like, short-term rentals kind of found us. So then starting in 2023, our whole life and world and all of our businesses revolved around this crazy, wild world. And in that time, too, we also found the opportunity for Cabins on the Cumberland. So a lot of change and newness in 2023, and it was wild. And I don't know that I'd recommend it, but I would probably do it again.
Ooh, there's so much for us to talk about there. And I love the story of how you said, I could do this too. Like, I also started my career in the fashion industry, so we have some parallels there. But I love that you saw what these influencers were doing and you were like, hang on, I could do this too. And then you did it, because I think there's a lot of times in life that all of us have that feeling. I've worked in PR, so we've, sent things to influencers, celebrities, etc. And you have a moment where you're like, wait, we're paying them how much? They're doing what? Like, what am I doing over here? And yet we don't really typically action on that. So what was it that gave you the confidence maybe to be able to say, forget working at the retail side, I'm going to switch and be the influencer in the first place?
Insanity. No, I don't know, Katie. That's such a great question. I think for me, my dad was an entrepreneur, and I didn't share this part of the story, but they unfortunately lost that business my senior year of high school. And so that forced my parents into personal bankruptcy. And they were like, we can't send you to school. If you're going to do it, you're going to put yourself through school. So I worked 3 jobs throughout my entire college career. I maintained a long distance boyfriend who is now my husband. I also studied abroad, and I fundraised for that. Like, I sent letters to my pediatrician and my orthodontist and was like, this is what I want to do. And oh, are you willing to donate funds to it? And I just was kind of like, I want it. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to just figure out how to make it happen. And there were times that I did things like that where I couldn't even explain why. I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this or why I'm so committed to it, but I know that there's a greater purpose for me in this, and I have to figure out how to do it. And that's how I felt in influencer marketing. At first, I think as an influencer, there was definitely a little bit of like ego and self-fulfillment in that. There just was, and being in that space. But as I got further into it and realized, am I trying to keep up with the Joneses, or am I really doing something that benefits the brands that I want to support? That's where I think this sort of pivotal moment happened for me. But I think it kind of started with just going, listen, there's this entrepreneurial DNA that I think just runs within me, and I have to figure out what that looks like and where that journey is going to be. And I knew what my skill set was at the time. Like, I knew the fashion industry really well. I knew about Instagram and was always continuing to learn. And I knew that I could storytell effectively. So with those skills, I was like, I think I can do this, and I think I can make a little bit of extra money doing it. And let's see what it turns into and what it grows into. And it grew into something that I would never have predicted at the time when I sent that first post. I like vividly remember my first few posts on Trendy and Indie. And it was almost around this exact time in 2016. I had like a red skirt and a heart-shaped top for Valentine's Day, and it was a whole thing. But I never would have imagined when I hit send on that first post what it turned into. And I think that's the beauty of just walking the path and making strategic choices and taking some risks, and it feeling scary, and you just being like, I'm going to do it anyway and see where I land.
And when you posted that first time, was there a part of you that was like, oh gosh, my friends and family are going to judge me for this, or embarrassed at all? Or were you like, I fully believe in what I'm doing. It's great. Everyone's going to love it.
I think it was definitely twofold. I mean, anytime that you're putting yourself out there on the internet and creating content, and this still happens for me, I think that there's this fear of like, what are people going to think, or what are they going to say, or who am I going to make mad, or, whatever the case might be. And I think that in those first few posts in the early days of Trendy and Indie, I think maybe I felt a little bit like, oh, I don't know about this. Like, this feels a little silly, but I knew that there was a greater purpose. And my big purpose within that business as well, and that brand, was also in supporting our local businesses here in Indy. So I actually got locked out of that Instagram account in 2018, right before Black Friday. And I had a lot of really awesome collaborations here locally in Indy, local businesses that were depending on my platform as a part of their marketing dollars for the Black Friday and holiday experience. And I couldn't post for them, and I had to refund partners, and it was awful. And in all of that, Katie, I was like, very quickly realized and felt like a piece of my identity was stripped away in all of that, and I had no control over it. This was a story on the 6 o'clock news. It was like, local businesswoman gets locked out of her Instagram account. I'm not kidding you. I was interviewed. It was a whole thing. My husband was like, this is the main story on our 6 o'clock news right now. I was like, I know, but it's a big deal for the Indianapolis community at large. And yeah, so I think there were things like that I was like, oh, looking back on this, it's just interesting how the journey unfolded. But that also taught me I am never going to rely on a single platform leading into short-term rentals, right? This was the learning lesson here. I'm never going to rely on a single platform for my entire business because when you put all your eggs in a basket you don't own, it can be taken from you at any point in time. Now, thankfully, I did get back into that Instagram account, and being on the news actually did help with that.
That's what I was going to ask, because I imagine, like you said, you're upsetting partners who clearly mean a lot to you. You're refunding people. It's impacting your business. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's a failure on your side, not because of anything that you did or didn't do, but it's a business failure, right? And now it's being amplified that much more by being on the news, something that as an influencer, you're probably like great for the platform, but not exactly the story that you wanted to have on primetime news. So how did that feel? Was there a part of you that was like, I'm just not going to answer this? Or were you like, let's make the most of it and all press is good press?
I think for me, it was more of a let's make the most of this. And I remember vividly, Katie, after this happened, probably like 3 days after, I actually had a travel collaboration with a cute little bed and breakfast here in Indy. And I remember waking up in bed there at like 4 a.m., just in tears, just crying. And I was like, everything that I've worked for the last 2 years, the stories and the content and the businesses and the brands and all the things feels like it's been taken from me. And that sucks. Like, that's not fun. So that's where it was like, oh, this piece of my identity. And on the other hand, it was also a moment for me to be able to educate and be like, listen, you can't rely on one platform. So we all have to do things differently. And that was when I was like, email list building is a absolute non-negotiable. I'd been doing it some, but I hadn't been pouring a lot of effort into it. And so that was a big shift for me. And I think also, I look back at that time, that lockout happened right after New York Fashion Week. And that's when I realized, like, I need to do something different, but how am I going to pivot? So much of my identity is tied to trendy and indie. Well, in all of that, I got a job opportunity with a fashion company out in Arizona. And they were like, you can come be our marketing manager. We've never had this. We're a multi-7-figure business and we've never had a marketing manager. Come do this for us and move to Arizona. So it opened some doors and opportunities. And also that is what very much led us to getting into short-term rentals because of a home that we sold actually in Phoenix and did really well on that. So again, like everything's just intentional. But I remember thinking during this whole lockout, there's a reason this is happening and I can't see it right now and I don't know what it is and it sucks while I'm in it, but there's got to be something greater on the other side. And there was. And so that's like just how I've always led. I've had those hard learning lessons, but that's how I've led my business. And so when these opportunities appear, or they may not feel like opportunities, challenges appear, I'm like, okay, why? I don't know, but there's something greater on the other side of this. And I have to lean into that.
That's amazing that you were able to have that perspective because you were still quite young when all of this is happening, right? And I feel like almost that wisdom comes with time. So the fact that you were able to see then, and I also appreciate you sharing like how it made you feel, because I think on the surface, people can be like, you're locked out of your Instagram, it's fine. Or people who don't really understand or appreciate influencer culture, a bit of an eye roll there. But you're right. It's like your identity was tied up in it. And bigger than that, this is something that you had been working hard at and for a long time. So for it to be stripped away from you, whether people believe in the platforms or the influencer culture or whatnot, anyone can understand that. If you are working hard for something and it's taken away from you, it hurts. And similarly, I want to go back to something you mentioned about your dad's business. Watching him as you're at this really pivotal life moment of graduating high school, going into college, or potentially going to college, and watching him as an entrepreneur have a business failure. I'm almost surprised that you then said, I want to be an entrepreneur as well. Was there a moment that you were like, I am going to go the corporate route because that's safer? Or were you just like, that's how entrepreneurship goes, and therefore that's why you had that wisdom from day one?
I wish my husband was here to answer this question for you, Katie, because he vividly remembers us being 18 and me going, I am never going to be an entrepreneur because I am never going to put my family through what we're going through right now. I mean, I had to take my 1999 Toyota Camry to be evaluated for its worth in the bankruptcy of my parents because they technically owned the car. I have these vivid memories of these things in college. And obviously, like, my college career looked a lot different than other kids who were at Butler University and their parents were footing the bill, which is great. Like, that's fine if that's your story. That's so amazing. But for me, it was like, I went up, I got up and I had to book the earliest classes that I possibly could because my afternoons had to be spent working. So I always had the earliest classes, and I tried very hard not to do classes in the evenings because I knew that my afternoons and evenings were going to be spent working. Then I had whatever classwork that I had to do, and I still tried to maintain a social life, and I joined a sorority and all the things. So I definitely feel like I didn't make the healthiest choices at college, but you know what? It's fine. It led me here. But there was definitely time in all of that that I was thinking, I don't want to be an entrepreneur. And I think I just associated entrepreneurship with failure. And I've gotten really comfortable with that now. And maybe it is because I have watched my parents and I've seen what they've done, but I also remind myself in that what my dad was creating and building and the business that he had was a very different business than what I've created. And I've actually had to do some work around that story too, because there was a big piece of me that just associated entrepreneurship with failure. And what if I let my family down? I remember moving into our primary home where I'm sitting right now in 2022. And this was a time in the Weber Co. where things had started to shift. We were like kind of getting past the COVID boom that we had seen, especially in the coaching industry and in online businesses. And I could feel that at the very beginning of 2022. And I was like, this is the year that things are going to change. We moved into this house and I was like, what if I fail? What if this house gets taken away from us because I can't sustain I can't sustain a business, all these things, all of these terrible thoughts. So it's constant. I feel like it's constant mindset work, but yeah, definitely was a time where I was like, I don't think entrepreneurship is for me. And now we run multiple businesses and we're just all in on it.
So what do you do when that voice creeps in and says, what if I fail?
I think I have to reframe. So for me, what that looks like, number one is journaling and vision work and going, what am I creating? What am I really building here? What's the purpose? What do I want to become? And pursuing only that and focusing only on that. Recognizing and acknowledging failures. But as you've heard me say in this, there's always a greater reason for whatever failure is happening for me. And I truly don't think I sit and like look at things that I haven't gone the way I thought they would as failures, right? Like I've had massive launches with 5 team members that have failed, where we have all these people in a live workshop and it's really great. And we've got all these people signed up and then no one converts into the offer. I've experienced all of that. And every time I have, I'm always like, there's a reason. I have to pay attention. So what's the reason? What's happening right now? What do I need to listen to? Where do I need to pivot? What do I need to like really focus on here? And I think the biggest testament for this was my husband and I have made this decision this year to leave our home and buy a camper and pursue camper life full time, which means that Colin will be leaving his safe, stable, secure W-2 because he still does have his W-2. And we'll be relying solely on our businesses as full-time entrepreneurs in this and as partners in it. And when I was talking to Colin about this, because it took him, I'm going to say probably 6 months to get on board with camper life and say, you know what, let's do this. I asked him the other day as we were driving down to Kentucky, I said, what was it for you that you were finally like, you know what, this is all going to work out and be okay? He said, I've watched you pivot and I've watched you do this now since 2016. And you've always figured out a way to make it work. Even if I don't understand it, you've always figured out a way to make it work. So I think I've just gotten to the point where I'm like, I just have to trust in something that I can't always see. And I was like, whoa, that is it. That is it right there. You have to trust in something that you can't always see. And you have to have faith in something that you can't always have confidence of what's going to be on the other side. And I think I've just gotten comfortable being uncomfortable, maybe.
Yeah. Wow. Full-time camper life. And you guys have 2 kiddos?
We do. Yes.
Oh
They're
my
2 and 4
goodness.
right now. They'll be 5 and 3 when we start.
Wow. And this is an indefinite plan. Like you don't have any timeline on it. You're like, we're going to do it until we don't want to do it anymore.
We have decided that we are going to do it. We're going to leave on June 22nd of 2026, and we're going to commit to a year. So we're going to do it for a year. And after that time, Katie, I don't know. Somebody reached out to me the other day to speak at a 2027 event. And I was like, I can't commit to that right now. I don't know where I'm going to be in 2027. Like, I can't answer that right now. And that is actually really okay with me. I think for so much of my adult life and professional career life, things have been planned and I know what's going to happen, or I have this plan in place and all these things. And I've always prioritized business growth and growing the businesses. And now we have these two sweet boys that I love so much. And I want to do something different with them. Like we've just kind of talked about, my husband and I, Colin and I have talked about, we get up, we both go to work, the kids go off to school and daycare, we come home, we're together as a family for a couple hours a night, and that is, dinner and bath time and then off to bed. And then we have our weekends together. But I'm like, what if this looked different? What if we did something different? And what if we lived in a place where we could be outside a whole lot more than we can be in Indiana as I stare at like more than a foot of snow and negative wind chills outside, right? And I think living in Phoenix opened our eyes to what that lifestyle could look like for us. So I think this definitely does come from that. I mean, we camped in a rooftop tent. We did that almost every weekend. We hiked every weekend. We were outside all the time, all the time. And that really changes things for you just as a human being. That is really life-changing. And we have one of our little guys goes to a nature-based school here in Indy, and he always is like, can we go outside? Can we be outside? Can we be outside? And I'm like, we need to change what we're doing as a family and do something different. And now's the time to do it before we really get into a school system and, established and all the things. So yeah, we're going to do it.
Oh my gosh, I hear everything you are saying so loudly. My husband and I have been talking about this so much lately, of this hamster wheel feeling. And like you said, that rush of like, got to pick them up from school, got to get through bath, got to get through bed, and like quick. It's overwhelming. And it's so exciting what you're talking about, because I think it really leads beautifully into talk about Cabins on the Cumberland and how hospitality and these experiences and travel for people who maybe aren't able to or aren't brave enough to just say, forget it, we're going to do this camper life. They're able to at least take a trip, to have those moments, to be able to reconnect as a family, to be outside, to enjoy, to escape the very cold weather that we are also having in New York City right now. So talk to me about Cabins on the Cumberland. You said like you had gone through a few pivots, and when you said, I want to go and niche more into short-term rentals, that's when this opportunity came around. So tell us about how that opportunity happened and what made you say yes.
Yeah, very, very serendipitously. The story of Cabins on the Cumberland is kind of a wild one. So we got into the world of short-term rentals in April of 2023. Like I mentioned, I was 8 months pregnant. We decided to start our co-hosting business. A good friend of mine who's in this industry, who's done very well in this space, was like, Steph, have you guys heard of co-hosting? It could be a good way. Like, you're telling me that you guys have capital to invest in a first investment property, right? Because we have our primary home. You have the capital to be able to purchase, your next vacation home or your investment property or whatever. So do that, but then co-host, because it could be a really good way for you guys to earn additional income in managing other properties. And so we started that business. And on that Instagram account that I created, I was like, here are the different properties that we want to have. And here's kind of our vision for this. Because again, I've learned in entrepreneurship that I am incredibly vision centered and vision led. And I have to understand, what is my bigger picture? If I'm going to be able to get through my day to day, what am I working toward? What's my bigger picture? And the last slide of that carousel post was the big vision. And that big vision was a piece of land somewhere in nature that was either in the mountains or had a water element or something, but big piece of land where we could have multiple units, multiple structures. And it was going to be perfect for retreats and weddings and like adult summer camp vibes is kind of what I had in my mind, Katie. And that I posted that in April of 2023. July 17th of 2023, I get a text from my esthetician here in Indianapolis, who's been doing my eyebrows since 2016. And she was like, she knows how I do business and she's watched me grow and all the things. She was like, just in case you want to go in with both feet. It was a Facebook post from one of her other clients sharing this piece of land that they had in Jamestown, Kentucky, right on the river, 25 minutes away from Lake Cumberland State Dock, which I knew of Lake Cumberland because we had been there. It's a big draw from that point in like a 4-hour radius, which Indianapolis is in. So we'd actually been. And she was like, we're going to be building cabins and you can buy them individually. And here's kind of the range of pricing if you buy them individually, or we're happy to sell the whole development to somebody and we'll build these cabins for you for, I think the listing price that she had on it was maybe 2.1 or 2.3 million, somewhere in between there. And I get this text. It's 10 o'clock at night. I immediately message this woman on Facebook and I'm like, I know you don't know who I am, but we have a mutual friend. And you're a client of hers apparently. And I want to know more about your cabins. Keep in mind, we had just used our basically life savings to purchase our first investment property here in Indianapolis, which we had to put 15% down on because it was an investment property and we were not in the vacation rental radius, or we were like too close for a vacation rental, like second home loan. We had a newborn and I was pivoting the Weber Co. and hosted by the Webers was a baby, tiny little business that was only in existence for like 3 months at this point. My husband thinks I've lost my marbles. He's like, what? No, like we're not going to buy a cabin. Definitely not going to buy a cabin development. And again, Katie, I was like, I can't explain it, but this is going to happen. And I don't know how, but here we are. We're going to do it. So anyway, I go back and forth with Valerie, who is very lovely and she's fantastic. And they're like, let's go out to lunch. So we go out to lunch here in Indy. Well, it turns out her husband, Dax, who owned the land and was going to be building the cabins, knows my husband's stepdad, like Indianapolis. Okay, we're all connected somehow. It's a whole thing. So they are like, why don't you guys come on down to the property? Come check it out. Like, let's, see what's going on. I already shared my vision. I was like, instead of selling these off individually, I think you should have an event center. I think you should turn this into a whole development, right? It should be a whole thing. And they were like, well, why don't you come on down to the beginning of August? And I'd started talking about this opportunity already on Facebook and on Instagram. And because I'd been building my personal brand, I had probably between July 17th and beginning of September that year, I had probably 50 different conversations with people who were like, tell me more. Like, I want to hear more. But Katie, I had no idea about the underwriting, the financing, the IRR. Like, I didn't know any of these terms. I knew nothing. And so I was like, here I am as this like very new investor trying to figure this out and have these strategic conversations. But my CPA and her husband who own long-term rentals here in Indy. And they're one of the ones who reached out and they said, we're interested. And a couple in a mastermind group said, we're interested. And again, they didn't know me. We had no idea who one another was except for this mastermind group. So we go to visit the property in August. Our CPA comes with us. We all kind of fall in love. Like it is just, there's something about when you drive into the development, the just like feeling of peace and groundedness that you experience as soon as you drive in. And we had no cabins at this point. It was just empty land. It was beautiful. And again, I was like, I don't know how we're going to do this, but we're going to figure it out. And my husband was like, we have no capital. I'm like, I will find capital. Don't you worry about that. So anyway, that was the start of the Cabins on the Cumberland journey and the very beginning of what would become a 2.5-year long build project.
Okay, so you drive in, you're like, I love it. I can see it. You already had the vision that almost like came to you to come to fruition. How did you make it happen? Because like you said, you don't have $2 million hanging around. And obviously there are creative ways to do this. But I think a lot of times when people hear this costs $2 million, they think if I don't have 30% of $2 million, I can't possibly do it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I started first by talking about this on Instagram and Facebook and being very green and just being like, I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but here's the vision and here's the opportunity and here's what I think is possible. I also took a look at the data and the market research. So I took a look at what other short-term rentals were doing in the market and in the area. I took a look at the travel and tourism data for Lake Cumberland, which draws 4 million people a year. And I kind of compared that to some of these other big vacation markets. And I was like, all right, there's absolutely demand. Yes, it's a lake community. Yes, it's seasonal. We are all in seasonal markets, so I don't have to be afraid of that. But we also have this opportunity to do these buyouts. And I didn't realize this at the time in terms of what the magnitude of that could be. But I was like, there's something here. So we just got to figure it out. So we visited the property. Dax and Valerie, who again own the land and were building the cabins, actually said to us that night at dinner, listen, we want to be a part of this and we're willing to be a 25% partner. So at that point, Katie, it's the beginning of August of 2023. We already had all of the partners lined up. So it's Dax and Valerie and they own 25%. My husband and I, and we own 25%. And I'll share how we found the money on that in a minute. Kate and Cam, they own 25%, and Britt and Keith, and they own 25%. So 8 total people, and we're all couples in this space, and we've all met each other in different walks of life, and here we are. So we decided, okay, let's move forward. Then we had to go to a local bank and say, hey, this is what we want to do. Here's what we're working to create. Here's some numbers that we've pieced together in terms of what we think we can do. And here's what we think cash flow will look like. And the bank appraised the property and appraised the total project. I think when we kind of went into this, that we had said, okay, 2.5 million for everything we wanted to build and create. The bank said, we can do 2.3 million, basically. They were like, here's our appraisal value at 2.3. So Dax and Valerie said, okay, fine, 2.3. We're good with that. And so that was kind of the starting price point.
Because they already owned the land, Dax and Valerie?
They owned the land, yes, but they essentially sold the land and they were going to be building the cabins in that 2.3. So that 2.3 million was the 9 acres of property, the private boat ramp, which was already done, the 12 cabins, and actually that was 11 cabins. We'll come back to that in a minute. 11 cabins, and then our venue and our pickleball court and playground.
And then they're essentially out after that because you've paid them. They're no longer in ownership.
They are still an owner. So they own the land. They built all of the cabins. And so they were paid their funds for that. They are still a 25% equity partner in the deal as a whole. Yeah, in the structure as a whole. So a local bank did agree to finance 75% loan to value. So we had to come up with the 25% down payment as a collective between the partners. So each partner put in their 25% of that down payment, if that makes sense, right? So we each put in about $160,000 is roughly what that looked like. So for Colin and I, the way that we came up with that, one of the partners in the partnership said, we know that you need to be a part of this, and we will give you a partial payment, basically, or a partial loan on this for you guys to be part of this deal. So we pay them back monthly, and we took a HELOC on our primary home. We had quite a bit of equity in this home, and so we decided to take a risk and take a HELOC out on it. And so that's how we came up with our portion of that 25% partnership. All of the other partners in the deal said, we don't want to manage this, so we are also the managing partner. And of course, we handle the branding and the marketing side of things too. So that's how we made it happen. A local bank believed in the vision. There were 3 other couples who believed in it as much as I did. And we said, let's go for it and see what happens.
And since you guys technically still put in 25% of the funds, do you also receive money for managing? Like, do you receive that commission? Yes.
We do. We do. But this is where in underwriting, I would do things so much differently, Katie. And I've shared some content on this, but we did not underwrite this deal effectively. So when we went to, in a few ways, when we went to the bank, we said, hey, 2.3 million, this is what we're asking for. And we also asked for them to cover the furnishings and hot tubs. Actually, we only just asked for the furnishings. And they were like, no, we won't do that. We weren't even planning to put hot tubs at these cabins. And that was a later endeavor. But my point to this is the partners, all of us, basically funded all of the furnishings and the hot tubs at the first 6 cabins out of pocket. So in addition to our $160,000 a piece down payment, we funded that times 6 for furnishings. And that was very involved. Before we decided to do this, Dax and Valerie had actually sold one of the plots of land off to someone else. And that guy came back to us probably like 3 months into us building and said, I no longer want this, but he'd already done a septic field. So he sold that piece of land back to us. That's how we got our 12th cabin. And we went back to the bank about 10 months into build. So we closed on December 31st of 2023. And in September, October of 2024, we went back to the bank and said, hey, we'd like to build a 12th cabin. We have this piece of land. We'd also like to build an indoor game center. And we'd also like barrel saunas, hot tubs for the rest of the cabins, and furnishings for the rest of the cabins. And the bank said, okay. So they came and reappraised the property, and it appraised for $500,000 more than we bought it for. So they were like, yes, we will give you this. No problem.
Wow. This is a local bank.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's so key, right?
It is key.
They also see the economic impact that it can bring as well.
They do. Yeah, they do. I know whenever I share this story and I hear people being like, I talked to 25 banks before I got a yes. I'm like, oh, wow, I did not deal with that. But anyway, so that's kind of how the financing side worked. So essentially where we ended was we are all in at like 2.7 is kind of where we landed. And the local bank was essentially the reason that the project happened in the first place. And they were just very supportive.
And where are you guys now? Has the build finished? Are you open?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
So we actually essentially there were different draw periods for the loan itself. So we actually were in a construction period for roughly the first 2 years. I think this bank actually like extended the period of time again. They were just so great.
Were you having to make payments during that 2 years? You
Interest
were.
only payments. Yeah.
Okay.
Interest only payments and only on the draws. So the first draw came in I want to say like January, February of 2024. And that was for the first 2 cabins. And so basically, the bank had a draw schedule that was like in phases of the project. Complete these things, we'll come out and do an inspection. Then we'll give you the draw on this. And then you'll start paying interest only on that. So we didn't go into full repayment until full completion of the development, which happened in October of 2025. So that was kind of the time frame on that. But yeah, we finished in October 2025, which is great. We were only a little bit delayed, but I mean, our team down there was great. And when I tell people like we built 12 cabins, an event venue, a pickleball court, a game center, all the things in 2 years, they're like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, "Okay." So yes, they moved very quick. The thing that stinks about October of 2025, I didn't get photos until November of 2025. So this was like roughly 3 months ago. Now we're in dead season down there. So now we're in our year of stabilization and going, okay, what are our actual ADR numbers really going to look like this year? And where are we going to land?
And how are bookings looking for this coming year? Because I imagine summer is going to be your peak season. This is the first time that you're actually able to capture those like long tail bookings too.
Yep. Yeah, summer will be our peak season. Honestly, summer of 2025 was fantastic. And we had 6 cabins that were launched and live going into peak season. So we actually launched cabins as they were live so that we could start producing income. So June of 2024 is when the first 2 cabins went live, followed by a third. And then our triplex went live in September of 2024. So at the end of 2024, we had 6 total units that were live. Coming into the summer of 2025, it was still those 6 units. And then we added an additional 5 as the last one was being built. And that was early June of 2025. So headed into peak season, we at least had everything there. But again, like we were still very much under construction, definitely not the ADR numbers that I wanted to be hitting. But I was also taking a look at what else was happening in the market and going, we're still hitting above market numbers, which was great for us. So if that was any indicator of what this year will be like, it will be very good. We've already secured 2 full buyouts that are on our books for this year, which is amazing. And we've just started marketing those in the last like 3 months or so. So we feel good about that. We've started marketing weddings as well. We've had a number of inquiries for those. So just waiting on the first one, right? Like we're in the very beginning of this and really figuring it out. But the good news is that there's interest and there's inquiries. And now it's really just about streamlining our sales process and getting brides to experience cabins on the Cumberland and what that could be for them. So we're building that. The vacation side of things, we definitely do already have bookings on the calendar for April, May, June. So I'm going, okay, great. We're booking further out because booking lead times in this market are 14 to 21 days is typically where they sit. So shorter booking lead times for sure. Definitely not as long as some vacation markets, but the fact that we're already seeing some of those reservations come in is a strong indicator to me that we've built something that people are excited about.
Absolutely. And just even what you were saying alone about performing above market average while you're still a construction site, I imagine a lot of that has to do with the branding and marketing that you've done around the property.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think too, our focus on being direct from the very beginning. I mean, I started our Instagram account before we ever had cabins live. And I was trying to tell a little bit of that construction story. And I could have done this in a much stronger capacity if I would have been down there more in construction phase. So again, like lessons learned and things we will grow through, and that's okay. But we also started building our email list. And as soon as we launched, we had our direct booking site. So we maintain 30 to 50% of our bookings being direct pretty much every single month. I'm going to say with the exception of January and February because it's just sad right now, and that's okay. Yeah. That's okay. We'll make it through. But we have prioritized that from the beginning, and because of that, you know this, with branding and marketing, there's a different level of perceived value. And when you create the experience and you're very intentional in who you're targeting and in sharing that story, you are able to increase your ADR beyond just going, oh, well, this is what AirDNA says that we can do. I
Mhm.
don't like to rely solely on one platform for our entire income, right? I'm not just going to rely on Airbnb, which is where, again, like AirDNA is pulling from there and from VRBO, et cetera. But I wanted to really make sure that we had our direct strategy dialed in.
And for someone who is launching a new property, it sounds like it's really important to build social early and to convert that into email list, as you mentioned. What are the other things that you would suggest people do or take seriously when it comes to branding and marketing?
When you are building, if you're building a micro resort or a boutique hotel or short term rental or whatever it might be sure to document as much as you possibly can and share that transformation story. I always tell clients, like, this is why HGTV is so successful. Chip and Joe are successful because they consistently tell a transformation story, and it's a story that people feel like they can be a part of and they have opportunity to participate in, and they get to watch that come to life and come to fruition. So
Mm,
don't take advantage of that, and make sure that you prioritize it. Buy yourself a tripod, take video of you unboxing things and setting up the space, like actually do that and participate in it. So that, of course, is the social media side. And yes, the list building is important as well. Something that I think is important as you are launching is to be list building. If you're leveraging social to share that transformation story, the call to action can be, hey, go to our website, be sure to opt into our email list, to join to enter to win a free stay, or to join to have early access, or join to get 20% off your first stay, or whatever it might be, whatever makes sense for your brand. But you're guiding traffic to that. So you're list building. And now when that property is ready to accept bookings, you already have your list. You already
yeah.
have a list of people that you can go, hey, we're accepting bookings, go book your stay here. And now you've got that direct booking side as well.
I really appreciate what you're saying about the transformation story, but I also think it's kind of counterintuitive to marketing and PR, particularly for me as a publicist. Like, we're always thinking like, let's give the like perfect finished done story. And I think on the personal side, I've had to unlearn a lot of that and see exactly like you said, people don't want finished results without the backstory. They want exactly that hero's journey, that arc, the times that you've been hit down, and even what you've shared in your entire career progression. Like, it makes us then say, I want to root for Steph that much more because I know everything she's gone through. Why do you think we struggle? I saw this a lot in the hotel industry, and this is, probably 5 or so years ago. So I'm sure things are changing, even 10 years ago now, where when we started to see, we understood the influence of influencers, social media influencers in the space, but the disconnect between a way an influencer could show our property and then the way that the website would show it. Even if you're thinking of a hotel room, the bed had to be perfectly made. It couldn't be the influencer shot of the messy bed with the breakfast in bed type shot, right? So where is that disconnect coming? Is it just kind of out with the old and in with the new? Or has this really always been there and we just need to gravitate towards it more?
Katie, I honestly think it comes back to the brand, right? Like there are certain brands that do present themselves, and some of it is like, yes, also about your ADR. I think no matter what, it comes back to understanding who your target audience is and what story are they going to connect with. And that's the story that you need to share and tell, right? So I think for those of you who are building and those of you who are creating, it is important. And maybe this is where you go, I'm going to build my personal brand and let that support the short-term rental brand. There's someone who has done this very well on Instagram, and I'm forgetting his name right now, but they're building a cabin in Virginia or West Virginia, and he is talking about this on his personal Instagram. And he's going, a year ago, I told you that we were going to build the best cabin in Virginia. And it's nice. Like, it's a nice cabin, but you guys, it's not anything that anyone else has done. The difference is his storytelling and him inviting you to be a part of that story. So he's using his personal brand, but then on the other side, he's building up the brand for the cabin. And I think they're kind of building a micro resort, right? So a cabin collective, if you will. And that content does look a little bit different. You're still seeing some of the behind the scenes, but the lens of which you're seeing that does look slightly different. And there are certain things that I share about the cabin's journey, like the numbers and some of that behind the scenes and the messy work there, that I'm not necessarily sharing on the Cabins on the Cumberland account, because our guests don't care about the numbers, but they do care about, oh, you guys we struggled with getting internet down there. And our guests, we had a guest, I shared this on there, and a guest commented and was like, well, I'm just glad you guys opened because this was the best day that we've ever had, or something along those lines, right? So they do care and they are paying attention. And when they see, also, I think that the advantage that we have in the hospitality industry, we are real human beings behind these businesses, and we are real hosts. Like we're four couples. We all have our own families. We all have our own reasons for wanting to bring Cabins on the Cumberland to life. We're not these huge investors with millions of dollars in our pocket. Like, you heard how we got into this deal by taking very large risks and taking out debt in order to make it happen. But because we believe in something bigger and because we prioritize the hospitality experience. And I think sometimes in this real estate space, we get so far removed from that. And that's really sad. And that's where my heart in branding and marketing lie. It's like, no, you're speaking to your guests. Like, what is connecting them? What's the emotional connection for them? And that is what we have to make sure is transparent or comes through and shines in our content. But definitely don't shy away from it. We would have had very different results if it would have been like, we would have waited until October 2025 and been like, oh, here's Cabins on the Cumberland. This whole thing is done now. I didn't get to share any of the build process or any of that, right? Like, that would have been a very different journey. And again, I think we know our target audience well enough to know that they wanted to be a part of that story, and we gave them the opportunity to participate.
Steph, I want to ask you the last 3 questions that I ask every guest. And the first is, what was the best hospitality experience that you have ever had?
So I'm a big Disney fan, and we go to Disney quite often. And the last time we went was in October of 2025. And I took my 2 boys by myself. Colin did not come because he did not have any more vacation time after installing everything and building things at the cabins this year, or in 2025. So I took the boys, and we were at Epcot on our last night. And Eli our 4-year-old had a massive meltdown inside of one of the UK shops because he wanted a Kanga from Winnie the Pooh. And I was like, you're out of money. I'm not buying this for you. We're done. And he just had a meltdown. Well, he had a pin book because he pin trades now, and it got left in that shop. And we were on the monorail headed back to our hotel, the Grand Floridian. And he's like, where's my pin book? And keep in mind, I'm overstimulated. They're overstimulated. They're tired. Everyone's over it. He's crying and sobbing. We lost the pin book. It was gone. And I was like, I've never lost anything at Disney before. I don't even know what to do. So we went to the front desk at the Grand Floridian, and she was like, I can try to call, but what you should do is fill out this lost and found form, describe the pin book. If you've got a picture of it, which I did, I screenshotted it from a video, submit it, all the things. The magic of Disney, we got that pin book back 7 days later because somebody found it, turned it in. And I'm like, that is, say what you want about Disney, but they have done a phenomenal job of the entirety of the experience. And the fact that we got this pin book back with hundreds of dollars of pins in it, not a single pin was missing. Somebody had, whether it was a cast member or a guest or whoever, somebody found it, turned it in, and it was returned back to us. And that meant so much to my son.
And that they had the systems in place to do that. Because I've left things on planes, and I've noticed the moment I'm off the jetway and I'm like, it's in 17D. And then they're like, sorry, couldn't find it. And you're like, I know it's there. So the fact that they made you fill out this form, but then you actually got it back, they went and did the due diligence to find it. That's incredible hospitality and meant the world, I'm sure, to your kiddo.
100%. Yeah, it absolutely did.
On the opposite side, what was the worst hospitality experience you've ever had?
Honestly, Katie, I think the one that I could think of that was the worst for me, we stayed in a short-term rental that we booked on Airbnb out in the Hollywood area, and photos and what was described to us in terms of experience did not match what we actually received. And even down to we didn't have enough toilet paper for our stay. And so I'm like, those are the things that, again, as hosts, we have to take note of. It's so important for us to go travel and for us to experience and to take note of what are the thoughtful little things that made us feel cared for and thought of. Honestly, having enough toilet paper for the entirety of my stay that I didn't have to buy makes me feel cared for and thought of, right? So those simple little things.
Yep. Final question for you. What does hospitality mean to you? And is there anyone, a person, or a brand that you think has truly mastered it?
There is a phrase here in Indianapolis called Hoosier hospitality. And I think we have this because Hoosiers innately, I do feel like, are very welcoming. Like we welcome everybody into our home. We always have food. We always host the gathering. Saying goodbye takes us like 20 minutes because we just love to connect and love to be with people. And I think for me, hospitality is about providing people experiences that make them feel like you care, that make them feel like you thought of them, that make you feel like it was intentional, right? It was designed for you. And there's an emotional connection there that I think is really important in hospitality that I think sometimes we get caught up in real estate investing and sometimes we neglect it. And you and I, Katie, have talked about the welcome experience, right? You can't neglect that welcome experience. Someone is going to decide how they feel about you in the first 10 minutes of their stay, of being there, and even from the very first interaction. So don't neglect the entirety of the whole guest journey, aside from just the stay as well.
Steph, this has been so much fun, so inspiring. I loved hearing your story. Thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thank you for having me, Katie.
All right, everyone. It's time for today's sweet summary, where I break down the key insights and actionable takeaways from today's conversation. I knew today's chat with Steph would be insightful when it comes to branding and marketing. But what I didn't expect was how much we'd focus on mindset. It started from the very beginning of our conversation when she talked about partnering with fashion influencers when she worked at a local boutique, and she remembered thinking to herself, that feels like something I could do. And so she did. How often have we all had that same thought and then did nothing about it? The gap between thinking and doing is where so many dreams stall out. And that's such a shame because it's in the doing that we prove to ourselves that we were right all along. Steph, on the other hand, is a master of reinvention. From fashion to coaching to short-term rentals to building a micro resort and now on to camper life, she is constantly evolving. And I think the reason those shifts feel so seamless is because she does something that many of us struggle with. She listens to herself. She listened when she pivoted to become an influencer, listened when she decided that she no longer wanted to be an influencer, and not just because she got locked out of her Instagram account. And now she's listening again, stepping off the hamster wheel, packing up her life into a camper with her husband and kids, all in the pursuit of something we all want, more time together. Steph has a knack for figuring things out, something that sounds so simple, but rarely is. Working 3 jobs to afford college, sending letters to fundraise for study abroad, finding a creative way to buy into a $2.7 million micro resort. That ability to hustle, problem solve, and make things happen is half the mark of a successful entrepreneur right there. And the other half? Well, first, know your vision. Be able to see the bigger picture for yourself, what you are really trying to build, not just this project, but for your life. And second, know your audience. Who are you actually talking to? Who are you for? And just as importantly, who are you not for? Branding, as Steph said, is deeper than just a logo. Maybe what her story proves is that the sign of a great brand is if it can become a filter for every decision that you make. And that concludes another episode of Sweet Success. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, rate, and review the show. We all know how important those 5-star reviews are. I also want to say a massive thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in. It means the absolute world to me. And I'd love to hear from you. If you have ideas for future guests, new topics to cover, or even just want to say hi, don't be shy. Message me through our website, sweetsuccesspodcast.com, or on social media at Sweet Success Podcast. That's sweet like hotel suite. Once again, I'm your host, Katie Klein, and I'm super excited to see you all next week.